Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the organisers and for a very nice warm welcome. So I'm Kiki, or Kavitha, and I'm currently doing a PhD in life sciences. So before I go into my PhD role and what I'm doing, I just want to go over my academic and career journey. And like all of us here, it's not been a clear journey. When I was 13 or 14, I always knew I wanted to help sick people. And I really liked science, so specifically in biology. And I liked to know how the human body works, how diseases are formed, and how treatment comes into play, and how patients are able to respond well to treatments or don't respond well to treatments. So when it came to A-levels, I knew biology and chemistry wasn't obvious. And then I looked at the different career options out there, and obviously when you think biology, chemistry, the next one would be maths, and then it would be medicine. And I was very much, at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and the tunnel mindset is to do medicine, and as a people pleaser, I was like, why not? Let me see if medicine is actually for me. So I did work experience, and I went to hospitals. I shadowed not only doctors, but pharmacists and therapists, so really got involved in kind of the clinical work that happens in the hospital. And I did enjoy it, and I did like it, but I also realised that I had time to talk to the patients as well. And when I spoke to these patients, although they were very happy with their treatment, sadly for a lot of the patients, their treatment is quite incurable, so you just manage the symptoms. And that kind of really hit the spot for me because doctors are doing a great job and there's a lot of work going under that, but it's also the work that the scientists do and the researchers do that kind of allows us to advance in the field. And so when it came to choosing my degree course, I looked at the degrees out there, and biomedical sciences degree was kind of what I wanted to do. And I knew that with the biomedical sciences degree, the options after that would be endless. I could go into becoming a doctor if I want to, I can do pharmacy, or I can actually stay in research. And, well, I'll get into that in a bit. So it came to applying, and I went and did my undergraduate at University of Birmingham in biomedical sciences. So what is actually biomedical sciences? It's the science of medicine. So you're looking at how your body works, the different mechanisms. You're looking at the different diseases. So my modules included immunology, cancer, liver diseases, cardiovascular diseases, pharmacology. There was a whole range. And it was only in my second year and third year that we got exposed to the practical work. So really understanding the science research involved in it. So when you think of science research, you always think of, oh, you're working with the mice, or you're working with random animals. I wasn't interested in that. I did not want to be working with any sort of animals. I don't like animals. I only like humans. And I say this as kindly as I can, dogs are not for me. So I knew I wanted to work in human biology. And it was only until my third year that we do our dissertation project. And the dissertation is, for some of you who don't know what it is, in your final year, you're told to do like a 3-month project. And in life sciences, you're given the research question. So kind of looking at what options were out there, there was one that was on looking at a specific protein and the role of this protein in liver diseases. Now, liver diseases is a very kind of sad outcome for a lot of the patients because your liver is a very vital organ, but when patients get diseases, your body shuts down because it controls a lot of the functions in your body. So I was really fascinated by this, and the work that I did, it was very small in the context of kind of the impact it had, but it was the skills that I learned and like the realization, and this was essentially my turning point, because the work that I produced, I knew it had some sort of relevance in the scientific community, and further on down the line, it could have a potential to curing someone or helping someone manage their symptoms. So it came to kind of my final year. I had done my dissertation and choosing what to do next. And I knew that science or research was something that was on my mind, but I didn't really have much lab experience because we were affected by the COVID pandemic. So I also didn't want to do a master's at the time. I felt like I needed a break from kind of studies and university. So I was looking at job roles. And what I want to say is when you're looking at job roles, you sometimes you're just finished university, you might feel like you don't have the experience, and you kind of put yourself down and you think, oh, what is the point of me applying? Like, I should just do a master's and just carry on another year and get specialised in a field that I don't even know if I like or not. I would not take that path. I would really think about what you want to do. If you want to do a master's, go ahead, go for it, if it's a field that you really like. But if you're not sure, just explore what's out there, whether it be an internship or any sort of placement or even a job. So in my case, I just clearly remember this moment. I just submitted my dissertation and I was like, what am I going to do? I searched on the internet and I was looking at what was out there, and well, I kind of say it's luck, but also it was a risk. I had the option of applying for a job in liver disease. And I say luck because I have done like a 3-month project in liver diseases, but it wasn't really that easy. I can't go to an interview and say, yes, I've done this project, can you give me the job? No, they're looking for experiences. Well, I had experiences in the lab from my undergraduate degree, but what else can I give? Well, I knew I wasn't very qualified, but I just knew I had to kind of work around and see what you do. So when you apply for research field jobs, what they really want to see is that you're interested in the field and you have a passion for it. And I did have a passion for it. I had a passion for it because the project was looking at liver cancer. And I mean, sadly, it's affected a lot of people. The cancer is not curable for many kind of diseases, and for liver disease and liver cancer specifically, there's still no cure. And so that was kind of my turning point in realizing I do want to work in this field and I want to work on this project. So I went into the interview and I gave my best shot. Now, I forgot to mention, for this application, you had to have a master's. So already in my head, I was like, I've not got the job, I'm just going there for experience. And on the side note, I just want to say, even if you don't think you have the option, or you can actually get the job, just go for the interview and see what happens, because you never know. You either come up with getting experiences on how to deal with an interview, or you actually get the job. And fortunate enough for me, I was offered the job. So I was working as a scientific researcher, which in that time was known as a research assistant. And that job was essentially, you are given a research project provided by a supervisor, and you carry out experiments to find the answer. So just kind of the basics of what research and what researcher is. When you think of like, oh, a researcher, you're just there to find an answer. Like the answer's there, you just got to pick it out. It's not really that clear cut, sadly. You have to address an unanswered scientific question. And that requires a lot of problem solving, a lot of critical thinking, and also a lot of reading around the topic. Now, I can put my hand up and say, I was not a reader. I did not really avidly like reading books. But this role made me kind of put myself in the position to start reading around the topic. And now I can clearly say I actually do enjoy reading around the topic, and I really do enjoy looking at the literature. So going back to what an RA was, or a researcher, my day-to-day very much varied, like all of the professions here. You would just be kind of told to like carry on and just told to answer this question. So you would look around the literature, see what's already out there. Now, the hard thing about this is that no one's really done it before. What you're answering is unknown. So you just kind of put together experiments and see whether it works or not. And it seems like, I don't know, when I explain it, it seems like, oh, like there's an option, there's a chance that you could fail. Yes, there is a chance that you could fail. But that's kind of a setback, and that's what resilience you need when you become a scientific researcher. You need to be able to just pick yourself up and just carry on and go again. What you're trying to do is prove or disprove a hypothesis, and if it works, it's great. The success of it is amazing. You kind of suddenly feel like you've reached the top and you've been able to contribute something very meaningful to the scientific community. But if you don't, that's also an answer. You've answered something that people were looking at and didn't really know whether it was an option or not. And so, yeah, that's kind of what a researcher is. And although it's a very rewarding career, and everyone says, Jana said, working in research is kind of boring, you're just in the lab. It's not always like that, and I just really want to break the stigma about it. Yes, I'm in the lab every 24/7, but you're not alone. You're talking to other academics, you're talking to other colleagues, and although I'm not directly dealing with the patients, I'm talking to other academics and experts in the field. You attend conferences and you see where your research question lies in the field and how it actually has an impact. So every time I think about like what I do now, I always think back to 13 or 14-year-old self, where I knew my passion was to help sick people. And I know that I'm not doing it directly, but I'm doing it indirectly. I'm doing it by the bench. And I always use the term bench to bedside, which I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with it, is, you know, the work that you do in the lab, you go into clinical studies, and then you see the actual impact it has on patients directly. And the best example I can give is actually the COVID pandemic. We were all at a standstill in 2020. We didn't really know what to do, and doctors were kind of treating what they could manage with the symptoms. But it wasn't until the actual work of the researchers from Pfizer and AstraZeneca and many more researchers who, you know, haven't got the recognition they need that we've been able to produce the vaccines that we need and basically fight the virus. So, but being a scientific researcher, you really are at the pinnacle of kind of creating change in the medical field. And I'd really recommend it to anyone who's thinking of a science degree and doesn't really know what they want to do. So going back to kind of the advice and the tips that I want to give you guys, you're all like thinking about your A-levels or currently doing your A-levels and not really sure what to do. I would really recommend, you know, you're obviously going to be reading around what jobs are there, but also find a role model or find a mentor. And I say this because when I was applying for an RA position, my interviewer was a brown woman. She was an acting director. She was great. And she looked at me after the interview and she said, "I know that you're nervous. I know that you feel that you don't belong here, but trust me, you did fine. And you've got this." Like, it's those encouragements and those positive words that you really need to be surrounded by. So if you're able to, and you're fortunate enough to find a role model or a mentor, even if you speak to one of us here, have that person beside you. They can really guide you and really help you decide what you want in the future. So currently, like I said, I'm doing a PhD, and I'll just briefly go on to what a PhD is. A PhD is a very large, a very long independent research project that you do for 3 to 4 years. And it's similar to what I did as a researcher, but I'm doing my own experiment and conducting my own research. So my supervisor was able to secure funding, and I've got a research question that I will be addressing, and hopefully over the next 2 to 3 years I'll be able to answer it. And following this, I'll be able to produce a thesis that is publication worthy. And this is really key and important if you want to work in research. You should be able to produce publications that can be contributing towards new scientific discoveries. And finally, I just want to touch on, obviously we talk about networking and, you know, interacting with different professions. Once you do a PhD, you're not just restricted to being a researcher. You can do a lot more. You learn a lot of transferable skills from doing a PhD, whatever it is, even if it's in law, if it's in economics. Doing a PhD really does build up your resilience. And I know I've mentioned this, but it's a very key point because you face a lot of setbacks. Doing a PhD also allows you to interact with different people, and communication is something that you really build. And communication might be a very soft skill that you think won't be very valuable because you pick it up, you know, when you're doing your extracurricular activities. But it's very key when it comes to actually having a profession, because you'll be faced with communicating with directors or managers, or even talking to the patients. So there's always different ways you can use the soft skills that you gain. And so this brings to my last point. So when you're excelling well in academics, also excel well in your extracurricular activities, whether you play the piano, whether you do dance, whether you volunteer at care home. All of these skills you pick up, you'll be able to apply to when it comes to your job application and what you really want in the future. So I just want to kind of wrap up and say, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do right now, and just be honest with yourself and realize where your interests lie. You don't have to know your set career path currently, but just know what you're interested in, and it's okay if it changes along the way. So thank you very much for listening.